Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And I see our participant list is quickly increasing, so we'll give it just about a moment, and then we will start our program. I feel like I'm driving a ship here with all my buttons. We've had well over 75 people register for this morning's program, and so people are dialing in very quickly. We are just about at 40 now, and at 11:02, which just became now, I think we are ready to start, and I know that we'll have more people that will join us. So to everybody on the screen, thank you so much for joining us, and for everybody who is dialing into our webinar, thank you also for being with us. My name is Gail Letts, and I am pleased to welcome you to Let's Talk, which is a series of webinars designed specifically for women to talk about topics such as business, finance, career, and health and wellness. Our program this morning is part of a three-part series of discussions that we're going to have, focusing on the topic of diversity and inclusion. This morning's program features an impressive panel of women who I'll introduce in just a moment, and we'll be talking about racial inequity and how we as women can join together in a shared sisterhood to make a difference. Our next program will be on July 29th, when we will discuss how to create a culture that embraces diversity and inclusion. And then our third part will be on August 19th, when we'll talk about building a diverse workforce for the future. During the course of our conversation this morning, we'd like to have you submit your questions, and we'll try to incorporate as many of those into our remarks as possible. So you can use the chat or Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So let's get started. Let me first introduce our speakers, our panelists. And I'll ask each of you to raise your hand so that everybody can see who you are, because I don't think the order I have you on the screen is the same that some of our viewers may see. And by the way, for anybody, you can change the order of people by using the speaker view at the top of your screen. Adrienne Whitaker. Adrienne is currently Senior Business Director for SOAR 365, and she has been there since July of 2017. Adrienne is an advisory board member for CNF Bank. She is on the City of Richmond Minority Business Enterprise and Emerging Small Business Advisory Council. She was Vice President of Philanthropy and Marketing for Virginia Home for Boys and Girls. She was Vice President for Institutional Advancement and External Affairs for Virginia State University. And she was SVP and my right arm when we were together at SunTrust. She was my head of marketing. And I fondly referred to her as my chief of staff because she kept me in line all the time. Our second panelist is Michelle Ellis-Young, dressed in her Zeta blue, I understand. Michelle is Executive Director of the American Red Cross, where she has been there since January of 2020. She was previously Director of the Retail Alliance Foundation. She was Manager of Customer Service and Community Relations for Farm Fresh, a course reviewer for the American Council on Education, and an adjunct instructor for the Bryant and Stratton College. Welcome, Michelle.
Good morning.
Our third panelist is Mary Kate Andris, who is CEO of the YWCA of Hampton Roads, where she has been since April of 2016. Previous to being with the YWCA, Mary Kate was Philanthropy Director for the Girl Scout Council of the Colonial Coast. She was also Director of Leadership and Planned Giving for Virginia Wesleyan College. She was Major Gifts Officer for the Eastern Virginia Medical School, and she was an Advancement Associate at Westchester University. So let's get started with our topic, talking about racial inequities and how to have the dialogue as women. So I think what I want to start with is throwing a question to Adrienne and to Michelle. You two are very successful Black women. I would love for you to talk about your personal career journey, what challenges you've experienced as a Black woman, and how you overcame those challenges. So Michelle, why don't we start with you?
All right. Thank you, Gail. And good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Michelle Ellis-Young, and I guess I would say by all accounts, I am a blessed statistic, probably considered one who would not have or should not have really made it in the world as it relates to career progression and my pathing. I come from a broken home, but a home filled with love and support to believe that you could do and be anything that you wanted to be. And early in my journey, my family recognized that I had more in me than the world was giving to me. And so I transitioned from public education into private education. And they spent a lot of money and last monies to educate me. I had the privilege of attending an all-girls Catholic high school, which I would say for me was a foundational piece for who I am as a woman and as a woman of faith navigating the waters of corporate America. Progressed on and achieved several degrees. Most of my career was spent in higher education on the administrative and academic side, and some stints in corporate America for a publishing company and doing some process improvement work. But at the heart of who I am a learner. And I believe in continuous lifelong learning in whatever position that you're in. I progressed on and moved on to a grocery store. All this education, I ended up working at a grocery store, one of the best experiences in my life, honing HR skills and really just meeting people. And then moved on to a small foundation that's focused on entrepreneurial business, entrepreneurship. And then I'm at Red Cross, my heart and my passion. And as I migrated these waters of what we call corporate America, whether it be corporate or nonprofit, I have to say that I have been extremely blessed by my surroundings and individuals who were champions for my career path. I can think of people like Deb York, white woman. I can think of someone like Dr. Christine Burge, white woman, but I can think of a Pam Walker, Black woman. These are all women who undergirded my talent and the Mickey knives to be all that I could be professionally. But they were my buffers, I have to say, because beyond them, there were some individuals who I would say if it had not been for those women, those sisters standing in the gap to ensure that I had equal access and a level playing field to display my talents, I probably would have struggled a lot worse than what I had to struggle. Now, my journey is not one full of blatant racism, but there were those aggressions and microaggressions that clearly were a part of the journey. And you learn to navigate those waters by surrounding yourself with a true support system of individuals who have your best interests at heart. And you quickly learn who those individuals are. And if they're not for you, you quickly learn how to place them in another pile or another bucket and work around them. One thing about being a Black woman in America is you figure it out, and you figure it out very quickly. Who's for you and who's against you. Because the rules were already written that you're going to have to work twice as hard as anyone else to prove that you're just as good. And so I recognize that I come with a lot of stuff to the table. I come to the table as a Black Southern woman who is, I hate to say it, aging gracefully, I will say, which says to people that I'm not qualified, I'm slow, I'm too sensitive, and I don't have the ability to do those things. But they forgot I was a little Black girl from New Orleans, Louisiana, whose family told her, be better than your best, and in all things, you can succeed. So that's kind of my journey and how I've moved about.
Michelle, heaven help anybody who underestimates you. Force of nature, and I absolutely love it. Thank you, thank you. Adrienne, how about you?
Gail, first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this panel. It's a big honor, and so thank you so much. Gail, my story is a lot like Michelle's, even though there are different nuances. As you know, I'm not first generation college. A couple of generations in my family went to college before me. However, that did not mean that there were any less challenges. In fact, as a child, I was told very early on that there would be challenges. There would be individuals who would want to block my path, and I had seen it happen with my own father. I had seen it with other individuals in my own family. But when I talk about my journey in corporate America specifically, a lot of times people think that my story starts just 20 years ago. Because if you look at my time, it seems like for a long time, I've had a very successful career. I've been very blessed. And that's a word Michelle used. I've been very blessed. And so I think I became a vice president at SunTrust Bank, where you and I worked. I was around 30. And I was a senior vice president at the bank, probably around 35. However, when I started off at the bank, my start looked very different than other people who were where I was when I left the bank. And what I mean by that is I went to the College of William and Mary. I graduated from William and Mary. I then worked at a small thrift where I progressed to a assistant branch manager. I went to retail banking school. And then when that institution failed and I had to go to a larger institution, Crestar, which became SunTrust, my thought was I would be able to easily go into another position as an assistant branch manager. That wasn't the case. There were positions that were available, but they were not considering me for those positions. Instead, my very first interview at Crestar, which again was SunTrust, was as the assistant to an assistant. So it was the assistant to an administrative assistant. And I didn't get the job. It was to answer the phones as a receptionist. And mind you, I had been a telephone operator for William and Mary for 3 years while I was in college. And the individual, the woman who was interviewing me for the job, who was the administrative assistant, said to me that she didn't think I was going to be able to grasp the fast pace of being able to do that job. I haven't shared that a lot with people because a lot of people don't know that that was my very first introduction into the bank. And then when I did come into the institution, again, others were coming in who had the same background, graduate from college, gone on to graduate school, couple years experience in banking. Others had come into the management training program to be able to go on to become in commercial banking or wealth management. My first opportunity that I got at the bank was in the basement. It was in the basement in a clerical position. I was with several other people who were in the basement. And it was one of those positions where there was when I say basement, no light at all, just basement, practically a dungeon, gates closed in the securities area. No one else who had my job, except for one person, a Black male, actually even had a college degree. The only requirement for that job was as a high school graduate. That was my introduction into our institution. And it really told me just how far I was going to literally have to climb. And I agree with Michelle. It was thankfully that I had a good system around me, some wonderful mentors, some wonderful supporters. But I was very fortunate. I also had some good sponsors. I knew it was going to be my responsibility to find the allies. It was going to be my responsibility to let them get to know me. It was going to be my responsibility to let them know what I brought to the table, because no one else was going to be as invested in my success as I was. So I was fortunate. I actually did have some white males. Derek Ragland, John Garrity. I had some great white males that were my sponsors, C.T. Hill, Dale Kennedy. But I had to bring forth the effort of making sure that they noticed me. It wasn't going to be the other way around. And I had some wonderful, wonderful sister friends who were pushing me, who led the way. When I first got to the bank, there was no one who was a vice president. We had one person who was an officer, who was African-American female. So I had some sister friends who were pushing me. As they took a step, they pulled me ahead. And then I had people like you, Gail, who were great friends, who were in rooms that I wasn't in yet and could help me to navigate to get into those rooms. And so it really took a whole system, but at the core of it, it was going to have to be myself that was going to be willing to do the work and make sure that people noticed the work that I was doing.
Thank you, Adrienne. You know, it's interesting. When you were talking about one of your first jobs was in the basement. I don't know if anybody has seen the movie. I think it's called I Feel So Pretty with Amy Schumer. And she was working for a cosmetic company. And because she did not look the part of this beautiful face, they put her in the basement. And she decided she didn't want to be in the basement anymore and took those assertive steps to say, don't put me where you think I need to be. You're not seeing my potential. So I think it's a lot of what you've talked about. Thank you both, Michelle and Adrienne, for sharing that. Mary Kate, as the CEO of the YWCA is doing some fabulous work, has always done fabulous work, but has launched a program called the 21-Day Challenge. And it's the 21-Day Challenge on racial inequity, taking a look and exploring issues. I signed up for it. I am learning something new every single day, and I'm shocked that some of the information that's being shared, I had no clue. So I want to say to the YWCA, thank you so much for doing that. If you could just briefly talk about that program and the work that the YWCA is doing focused on women empowerment and racial injustice.
Sure. Gail, thanks for inviting me to be part of this esteemed panel with these lovely women. We've really built a nice friendship, and it's been really great conversation. Yeah, the YWCA of Southampton Roads has been around for more than 160 years, and our mission is to eliminate racism and empower women. And while we're doing the empowering women side, we've always been struggling with how to eliminate racism. We know that we single-handedly can't do it by ourselves. It takes a group, it takes an effort, it takes some activation. And so what we thought we might do is educate our community by creating this 21-day challenge. It was initially created by the YWCA of Cleveland and has been shared, the content has been shared with us. And then we have thrown in a little bit of local content because we think that it's important living in Virginia that we know our local history. We talked last week about education and talked about the Norfolk 17. This week we're talking about criminal justice reform, and we're talking about incarceration in Virginia. We're one of the top states with the highest numbers of incarceration, and specifically young African-American men. So we're doing this. If you sign up, it's free on our website, ywca-shr.org. We're in the 11th day. I believe today is the 11th day, so we're about halfway through. And every morning at 6 a.m., you receive an email in your inbox, and it gives you 5 minutes of action steps. Read an article, listen to a podcast, watch a TED Talk, watch a video, and really it educates you about structural racism, institutional racism. It defines some terms. It talks about white privilege. We talk about, again, criminal justice reform and racial justice. And it really educates you on what's going on. If there's, you're feeling like you're learning, you're yearning for information, as Michelle said, I consider myself a lifelong learner as well. And so if you're looking to learn about what is racism, how do you identify it? What is unconscious bias? How do you identify it? This is the perfect way. And it comes right to you. So you don't even have to do anything. Just open your email.
Well, and what I love about it is it gives you 3 options. So if you're on the 5-minute time frame, you're great. If you're on the 10-minute time frame, you're great. Like I said, when I saw 21 days, I will be honest, I kind of sat back and thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to make any commitment to do anything for 21 days, although I know 21 days makes a habit. But with all that said, the first day that I did it, it was, wow, this is really easy. And not only is it easy, but I am learning things that I did not know before. One of the things that I'm just going to very quickly point out, and I circulated this TED Talk to an awful lot of people because I found it just shocking, just shocking. It was a TED Talk called Why Black Girls Are Targeted for Punishment at School, and it's by a woman named Monique Morris. And just a couple takeaways that came from that I wrote down. She talked about Black girls are the only population overrepresented all along the way in any form of punishment. Black girls are 7 times more likely to be suspended. Black girls are 3 times more likely to go to juvenile court. Black girls are perceived as needing less nurturing, that they are much more aware of sex. They don't have to be sheltered. And this disparity is formed viewing them at age as early as 5. The third thing, people view girls age 5 as being these street smart girls, which is really shocking. They don't allow the opportunity to do it. One quick question before I forget it is somebody saying if we sign up now for the 21-day challenge, can we access the days that we've missed?
Great question, Joanne. Sorry I didn't mention that. Yeah, the previous 10 days are listed on our website. So you can go back and start from the beginning while you're also receiving what comes in your inbox. Yes.
So staying on the theme, it said Black girls are viewed as older and more experienced. Black girls are viewed as too loud, too angry, too visible. Black girls are told they have to conform with their hairstyles. And it talks about the stress of what that does. And to any of us, I mean, I just got clipped and dipped yesterday. I fret with my hair all along, but my hair is so much easier to deal with because it's just thin and fine. I can just blow dry it and get it done in 10, 15, 20 minutes. You know, Black girls need to be embraced by the education system. I loved the comment on that, which is education should be freedom work, that we should stop adding police officers into schools and add more counselors, that we need to integrate arts and sports into the curriculum, and we need to ensure that every single Black girl has somebody they can trust to go to talk. There's a lot of things that are weighing on their mind, and they need to be able to express. So again, Mary Kate, thank you to the entire YWCA for doing that. It has been fabulous, and I continue to learn. So Mary Kate, you had mentioned definitions. And one of the books that has become so popular is a book by Robin DiAngelo called White Fragility. The other day, this esteemed group, we had a conversation about the book, and I will say it's not for everybody. There are things in it that you'll like, there are things in it that you won't like. But one of the things that I found most valuable was it put some definitions around terms that maybe I've heard but never really thought about. As an example, talked about discrimination is action. Let's start with prejudice. Prejudice, all humans have bias, and everybody will say that. So it's recognizing the prejudice and dealing with it. Discrimination is action based on prejudice. Racism, in this definition, I really thought it was enlightening. Racism is when a racial group's collective prejudice is backed by legal authority and institutional control. And then it also talked about white privilege, which when I will tell you, I had not heard that term a lot. And when I heard it, my first reaction was to push back because I did not come from privilege. And I took a completely different tone to it. So Michelle, white privilege, what does that mean to you? And I'd like to ask all 3 of you. And then I've got 2 really juicy questions I'm going to ask you guys. So Michelle, white privilege, what does that mean to you?
You know, when I think about white privilege, and first let me just say I sometimes struggle with that term myself because of the term privilege, you know, and that personally for me, when I think of privilege in an affirmative way, you know, as a good thing. It's a privilege to serve. It's a privilege to be at a certain place and in certain things. And so the term itself, I struggle with a little bit. But when I think about it in the context of what we're all talking about, you know, it's that unseen, unconscious advantage of white people that's legacy, and in all honesty, it's fundamentally, I believe, a root cause, and it exists. And I happened to be reading an article some time ago. I think the gentleman's name was Corey Collins, and he talked about this a term of white privilege and used it from the framework of power, and power in three instances. He talked about it's the power of normal. You know, it's the things that white people don't think about or have to think about simply because it's there and it exists. We saw a couple of weeks ago that Band-Aid finally, after all of its years of history of making boo-boos feel better, came out with a flesh tone Band-Aid that mirrored the skin of people of color. Something white people don't have to think about is a simple Band-Aid that matches their skin. That's a power of normal. And then he talks about the power of the benefit of the doubt. By virtue of who you are from your skin color, you don't have to worry about the things that a person of color has to worry about. You don't have to worry about going into the store and typically being followed down an aisle just because your presence looks different. You don't have to worry about your hair care products being in a designated portion of a store, simply labeled not under hair care where normal people would go. It's labeled under ethnic care or ethnic hair care. So those are the types of things. Then lastly, he talks about this thing called the power of accumulated power, and uses this example, which I found fascinating, in that he talks about the whiteness water cycle. And he talks about, in essence, when it rains all over the place, but there are certain portions that are going to get more water than other portions of the land, depending on the water flow and the water cycle. And he equates that to white privilege. There are certain sectors of people who get access to that accumulated power that other people of color will never have, or I should not say never because I have faith, that people of color don't have that same access to. And so we talk about the accumulated the power of accumulated power. We're talking really about the have and the have not. So when I think about white privilege, that's really what it boils down to. It doesn't mean that you didn't have a burden. It doesn't mean that you got it the easy way. It simply means by virtue of your DNA, you have certain access to things that I don't have access to, that now place me in a perceived lower standard than it does you. And my playing field is not the same. It's great to give me a ball to throw, but if you put glue on the ball and I can't get it out of my hand, that's white privilege.
Thank you, Michelle. And somebody just asked if we would give the name of the author again, who wrote the book. The author.
It's an article. It's a higher ed article. So look up Corey, Corey Collins. And I get that, and we can add it on, but it's Corey Collins.
All right. And the book, White Fragility, is written by Robin DiAngelo, so that everybody knows that. Adrienne, Mary Kate, it was interesting as Michelle, again, was talking all about it. When I was reading the book, White Fragility, you know, I know that there has been some boycotting of the Academy Awards and the Grammys because not enough Black people have been being nominated for things. But what the book, and again, there's parts of the book that I like and parts of the book that I don't like. But what it really made me stop and think about was all the representation and the stereotyping that takes place. When you turn on TV, Most often, if there is a Black person on a segment, they are going to be associated with certain traits, very stereotyped traits. And in books, when you think about what's being taught in our schools, there's very little discussion about Black contributors to our history and people who have made a real difference. So again, it's a very thought-provoking book. And again, some parts of it I like and some parts I don't. Adrienne and Mary Kate, what would you like to add?
I think that Michelle gave an excellent definition of white privilege. And I could not add anything onto that, but I do want to personalize it for a moment. Because for me personally, when it comes to white privilege, it is not having to justify your being. Because as an African American woman, I have to justify just to be. I have to justify why I am in a certain place. I have to justify why I live in a certain place. I have to justify and I have to credentialize. That's a word that we used to use a lot, Gail, about making sure that you credentialize yourself when you get ready to go out and sell. I actually have to credentialize just to give my opinion in the workplace. So I have to set up the situation to give a reason for being before I even give my opinion, so that people can understand that my opinion is coming from a place of knowledge. And that goes back to that not having the benefit of the doubt. It's not just not having the benefit of the doubt in a situation where there is a right or there's a wrong. There's not being given the benefit of the doubt that you have a rational opinion to give that doesn't need to be justified by first explaining, how did you come about the opinion? Where did you learn it? To be able to go back and have to restate over and over again past experiences. To be able to just go through life and be is something that if you are not a person of color, you don't understand what that's like. And think about it. This is something that is instilled in Black people and people of color from very early on. So imagine if you have to instill how to get through life. It's almost a trauma that comes with that. But we've got to move beyond that place of trauma because we got to live in this society. And for me, white privilege is that personalized. And then from the right and wrong, never as a Black woman will I ever be able to weaponize my race. But we see as Black people, as people of color, that even in situations involving the police, that the whiteness of the person that is doing the accusation becomes a weapon. And that's something that's very personal, takes it to a different place than just the definition of what it is.
Thank you. Thank you. Mary Kate, I'm going to throw a different question at you. But if you want to answer more on white privilege, please feel free to do so. While women are now equally represented by number in the workplace, they lag in nearly every measure typically associated with success, such as the number of political leaders, pay equity, representation in professional positions, executive level leadership, C-suite positions, corporate and nonprofit boards. But for all of those where women are underrepresented, Black women are even worse in those numbers of representation. How would you assess the relationship between Black and white women in business? And do you have any thoughts on how we can leverage our sisterhood?
Yeah, thank you, Gail, for that question. And that's something the YWCA sees as our platform is access to equal pay, access to maternal health care for women of color. These are things that we're advocating for because we know that there is a disparity and the disparity is large. I want to say one thing about white privilege from a white person's perspective, if I could, and that is that every white woman that I speak with initially, when I mention the word white privilege, she tells me her story of strife and lack of access to money, growing up poor, single mom, maybe didn't have food to eat. I always tell the story that my mom served us liver and told us it was ground beef. And it's really good with ketchup, but it's not. We grew up poor, and that's okay, and I'm acknowledging that that is an issue. But to Adrienne's point, we grew up poor still as a white woman. It's not about the privilege of what we have materially. It's the white privilege of our DNA, right? And how we show up in the room. To Adrienne's point, Michelle's point, I could walk into a store and nobody follows me down the aisle. Nobody asks me for my receipt when I leave. And that's because of the color of my skin. So the white privilege I have is very much unseen to the white woman. And so I urge everyone to read Peggy McIntosh's article about unpacking the invisible knapsack, which also talks about white privilege. Old article, but a great read. Really defines more about what white privilege is. I think disparity-wise, we as white women, it is our job to bring our sisters of color along with us. It is our job to introduce them around town. It is, as an ally, as a co-conspirator, the only way we are going to change is to work together and to really create opportunities for women of color. I was on a call yesterday where we were talking about, looking deep into the staff, look in the basement and see who's working in the basement, Adrienne, right? And see what potential they have and bring them up, because we often are worried very much about ourselves. But as women, right, we all know the struggle is real as a woman, but as a Black woman, the struggle is super real. And it's our responsibility as white women to bring our sisters of color along with us to the boardroom, to the table, to the discussion. Help them not have to always validate what they say. Help them not always have to prove that they know what they're talking about, but encourage them and enforce them and create that system of support. Because I think together, white women and Black women will be an amazing force to be reckoned with. And I think, should we do it, then obviously, and I know we're going to talk about this, the next cohort we need to work on are white men, our white husbands and our white men and the white men in the boardroom. We need to teach them as well. But if we as white women and women of color can band together, I think we can get a lot done.
So just thank you so much, Mary Kate. And there was from Olga Gonzalez-Nichols, she said to all panelists, white privilege has to do with the unearned value assigned to the color of white people. And again, like as Mary Kate said, whenever she's used the term or the term has come up, other white women cringe right away because, and yes, it's interesting because I have made such a conscious effort now that I understand it of not going on with my story and making it about me and why I'm not privileged, because it's completely a different conversation. And it has been really eye-opening to me. Our sisterhood, our shared sisterhood, Adrienne and Michelle.
Gail, when you say those numbers about the disparity, it's something that that we can't dispute. Quite frankly, when it comes to women of color, when we look at the number of CEOs that we have of Fortune 500 companies, I think we have almost 40 women now who are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. We don't have one single woman of color who's a CEO of a Fortune 100 company. But if we go beyond that and we look at being in C-suite type of roles, we have less than 1% of individuals who are women, who are Black women, who are even in C-suite roles. So I really do applaud really what Mary Kate is saying, because as I look over my career, just personalizing it again, it has been, thankfully, because of a shared sisterhood that I was able to get some of the opportunities that I had. I did have white women. I had Gail Letts, I had Phyllis Geyser, who gave me some wonderful opportunities. Quite frankly, actually, Gail, I think you inherited me. I was already in my role when you came in
I
as
did inherit
CEO.
you.
But what was really critical about that relationship was that we made it a relationship. We made it a partnership. We were invested in each other's success. I felt invested in you doing well as CEO of our region. And I felt as though you were invested in me in doing well in my role. And I felt as though you gave me increasing opportunities to shine. And so I think that that's something that we need to remember, is that it's not necessarily that we're looking for white women to give Black women a break. We're looking at opportunities where we can uplift and support each other. That's where relationship comes in. And so we're looking for Black women and white women to take the time to engage in forming bonds of sisterhood, bonds of relationship that uplifts us all.
Thank you, Adrienne. You're almost making me cry. You know, it's interesting as I'm watching the comments come through the chat room. We've got so many people that are basically saying thank you. Kate Meekin, who is my Chief Operating Officer, she's going to send out a list of all resources to the attendees following this. So we will get that to everybody as well. Michelle, anything that you would like to add to that?
No, just going back to a simple baseline, you know, what's the common denominator? And when I think about leveraging our sisterhood, I think about leveraging our commonality so that we can know who we are collectively, so that when the day comes, when the time comes, that there is a disagreement, that we do have a varied opinion about something, that we can learn to respectfully accept those differences in order to move forward with the business of the day. And, you know, Adrienne mentioned a key word for me, and it's all about relationship. You know, it's very difficult to engage with individuals in a personal and meaningful way if you don't have a relationship with them. And so at all costs, as women, Black women, white women, other women of color, we have got to get back to that nurturing place that's really in our spirits, and that's to take care of one another. And if we can do that, then we can start to really have some meaningful dialogue and create an environment of inclusiveness, where that diversity of thought, of who we are as individuals, does not continue to separate us, but certainly brings us closer together.
Thank you. Before we move to another controversial topic, I do want to say, you know, this is the reason Let's Consult was formed last year, which is to bring together women supporting women. And as I've built the team with Kate Meekin and with Candace Mraz and Adrienne and an intern from the University of Richmond, it's how do we help each other? We know that collectively we can do so much more as a group. We can make so much more of an impact. Singular, you might have power, but together you can make an impact. When we launch our new revised website next month, we will be building our database of connections, and the intent there will be to take, when a business tells me that they can't find a qualified woman, and particularly a woman of color, I've got a database of women I'm going to connect them to, because I'm not taking that as an excuse anymore. So please watch for the release of the new website and sign up, because that's what we're trying to build. We're trying to build this network of women supporting women from the 757 to the Richmond, to the Northern Virginia, to the DC, to the Baltimore market, so that we can do better and we can start increasing the population in business. But we all have to work together in order to do it. So now that I'll calm down on that, one more question as I watch the time very carefully, because this one could take the next 15 minutes. So I got so excited I lost my notes on this. So Mary Kate, you mentioned that we were going to have the conversation about bringing men to the table. So I have heard so many people, men and women, state that strategies to increase the number of women, white and women of color, if we have strategies to increase the number of women in leadership roles, people contend that is going to threaten the model of men in power. I would love reaction to that comment, because I have had women get in my face. Men have done it privately, I am sure, but women have gotten in my face who have said, what are you trying to do? You know, you're trying to change the balance of power. And yeah.
We should.
Sorry. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Mary Kate.
I just said boo-hoo. I live in a house with 3 men, right? So I've got 2 boys that I'm trying to teach how to respect women, right? Treat them right, and also understand the world that we live in. And so I think it's our onus. It's on us, right? We talked yesterday about George Floyd's mom. And how George Floyd at the very end of his life yelled for his mama. And we talked about how that is helping bridge the divide between white women and Black women. And I do believe that that is the case. But our nurturing instinct is to fix everything, right? We go to work, we put our superhero capes on, and we get it done. And we go home and we cook dinner and we have laundry done, and somehow we get to do it all. And so I think that we need to break that cycle of doing it all. We need to bring the men that we love in our lives, in our community, whether they're men of color or white men, and bring them in and have this conversation and sit down with them and help them understand why it's important. Why is it important to have a woman in the boardroom? Why is it important to have a female CEO? What does she bring to the table? What are the qualities that a woman brings as a leader? There are many articles about women as leaders and their compassion and their ability to lead. I mean, like I said, we lead every morning from the time we put our feet on the floor to the time we lay our head on the pillow. And so there are aspects of the leadership of a woman that I think men could use to their advantage and companies could use to their advantage. So I think it's our job to listen to what the men have to say, and then to work to educate them, and then to have them activate, because if we have men in our corner, I think that we can affect more change.
You know, it's interesting. So as I've been talking to an awful lot of men, what they're most intrigued by are the statistics on what diversity does to profitability.
Yeah.
And diversity to profitability is an exponential improvement. So if we have more women in leadership, if we have women and people of color, because when you get those diverse opinions, and first of all, we have to recognize that the world is changing rapidly. I think it's by 2042, whites will no longer be the majority in this country. You know, so we have got to wake up and understand that we are serving a different population that looks differently, and we have an obligation to support it and to understand it. And if we are in a leadership role and we have a responsibility to our shareholders, we can't stick our head in the sand, because we're going to take our company down if we don't recognize the change in demographics and figure out. So if we don't have any of the moral fortitude here, let's understand it from a business perspective. You know, we see that turnover is greatly reduced when a workforce believes that its leadership is committed to diversity and inclusivity. We see that people feel more free to be creative and innovative when they believe their workforce is diverse and inclusive. So not only is there a moral and ethical reason to do this and to embrace it, but there's a real good business reason as well. So if people can feel it on the emotion side, they darn well better feel it on the wallet side. Adrienne?
Well, Gail, you know, this is a bit of my passion, as you know. One thing I do know for sure, that the majority is not white males, because white males only make up 31% of the population in America. So that's one thing I do know. So the vast majority is the rest of us. But when it comes to making those important decisions when it comes to a company, you hit on it, Gail, when you said that it is the engagement of all of your workforce that is going to drive the revenue. We saw that in the work that we did for 8 years around diversity and inclusion and equity. We saw that as soon as we took our eye off of just looking at the numbers from an HR perspective, but began to integrate diversity and inclusion and equity into all of our lines of business, we saw that we were increasing our market share. We were increasing our market share because our employees were better engaged, and we were going after markets that were closed to us because of perception. We saw that with consumers, we saw that with businesses, and we also saw that when we tried to do business with localities and with the state that wanted to do business with organizations that were inclusive. And so we already know that from a business sense, it makes sense. So from a business sense, it makes sense, CENTS, to earn more sense, money, by doing diversity and inclusion. But there is a real fear when it comes to white men. And so we have to acknowledge and realize that there is concern. And the concern is not going to go away unless we address it. We've seen this before. We have 100 years of intentionally holding people back out of fear that opportunity would not be there for white men. That was the whole purpose of all the Jim Crow laws. It was to make sure that African Americans did not take opportunity that would otherwise be for white people, but specifically for white men. That was a very intentional action, and we have to be just as intentional with our educating, with our bringing things forward, and in our calling it out when we see it, as we have seen the intentionality of 100 years of oppression. It's not going to go away easily. We're going to have to band together, but we're going to have to be intentional, and we're going to have to set goals and objectives that are measurable in order to see that we're making progress.
You know, Adrienne, what you just said again, the book by Virgilia did talk a little bit about the difference, and there's been numerous articles about being a non-racist and being an anti-racist. And what you're saying is we need to become anti-racist. And
Absolutely.
We've got to call it out. So
yeah.
Now, you've been quiet up there in that corner, because that's how you're seeing on my screen. What would you like to do?
I don't want to monopolize, but I'm recognizing that the other speakers are there too. So you know me, I'll talk about
what.
When you read the question and you talked about that white men are feeling threatened, and I laughingly said they should. In all honesty, they should be. And you know, there comes a time when disruption becomes progress, and I think we're starting to experience what that progress really look like, because people are uncomfortable. And let me just say this, the reality is that there is people are uncomfortable on both sides when we talk about the workplace and coming into the workplace and talking about social unrest, racism, racial justice. You got white people who are afraid to have the conversation on one hand because they don't want to say the wrong thing, they don't want to hurt someone's feelings, whatever that is, or in some cases they don't want to really tell you what they really think about you, okay? Let's be real. On the other hand, you got Black people who don't want to have the conversation because we've been told you don't talk about certain things in the workplace. You don't talk religion, you don't talk politics, and you certainly don't talk your money to other people in the workplace. And so we all have a fear of something. But when I think about the threat for me and the threat for any woman should be this. I am a big believer in people being able to show up to work whole. And if I, as a Black woman, cannot show up to my place of employment entirety, whatever that is that makes me who I am, then that should be a problem for the men that I interact with. Because when you cannot allow a woman or a person of color to have the meaningful conversations, to show up in her wholeness, it conveys to that person that you are not very concerned about who I am as a person, right? It says to me that you lack empathy for who I am as a person and what I bring to the table. Now, I'm not talking about people coming to work and spilling out their problems and all of that, because there's a fine line with that. And always remember, the line, no matter how thin it is, it still exists. But when you don't allow me to show up in my wholeness, then you rob the very presence of who I am as a person to be authentic in all ways. And you also rob the business of its ability to forge forward in a diverse, equitable, inclusive, and creating a sense of belongingness, because I'm withholding who I am as a person. So I say change changes everything. There are things that need to be changed. And we're not saying we're dismissing the thoughts, the actions, and the feelings of white males, but I'm going to tell you, as I've mentioned, we are coming through those doors. And no longer are we coming through the doors ones and twos and threes. We're coming in to take it by force. And when I say take it by force, that is a sisterhood, a shared sisterhood of women who are armoring up to move forward beyond what others say we can do or we should be doing just because we are women. So if we have to kick your door down, we're going to do that. If we have to stand in front of you until you raise have the conversation, we're going to do that, because it's time that we are able to have that voice in all places and spaces.
Thank you, Michelle.
Gail, I just wanted to say one thing that Michelle said, because it just really resonated with me when she said, coming to the table in our wholeness. We've all heard the saying that you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if we are in systems that allow us to have weak links and allow us to actually institutionalize having weak links, then we've got broken systems, broken organizations, broken companies. That's why it's so important to be able to come to the table in our wholeness for the fulfillment and the whole of the entire organization.
So, this is, I knew we would have trouble keeping this within the 1 hour. We are 2 minutes before the end. A couple things that come to mind is, I've had, as I've told people about Let's Consult, and I've seen the look on some people's faces, what I've had to explain to people is that this is not an anti-male or a man-bashing approach. It is about lifting women up. And there's a big difference. I love men, okay? My greatest supporters have been men in business. And I appreciate every single one. But we don't have to put somebody down in order to lift us up. Now, can there be a little bit of discomfort along the way? Absolutely. Should we be asking more questions and having more dialogue? Absolutely. For anybody who's ever worked for me, you know that I have said so many times, if ever you become too comfortable, you are not growing. So continue to feel uncomfortable on occasion and challenge and find people that you can go to and ask that question. I've been so fortunate to have worked for years with Adrienne, and there are other people who come to mind like Hattie Hamlin and Hank Coleman, who when there has been an issue of Black that I've wanted to question, I have felt so comfortable into going into their offices and say, all right, I know I'm not going to offend you because I can talk to you, but I got a question. Help me with this. We need more of that conversation. So we do have it. It is now 12 o'clock. Our participants have hung in there with every single one of us. One-liners from each of you before I wrap it up. Mary Kate?
One-liner. I think the shared sisterhood is the way to start the conversation and to continue to see change.
I love it. Adrienne?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the relationship, Gail, because I think that we just need to have more investment in building relationships with each other. Then we can have tougher conversations that allow us to forgive each other when we make mistakes in those conversations.
Thank you. Michelle?
It's interesting. I brought this eraser that allows us to have opportunity to erase the big mistakes. Recognize when we're dealing with people, we're going to make those mistakes. But if we're connected together, we can get past that to start.
Well, to Michelle, to Mary Kate, to Adrienne, thank you so much for joining us. I knew this was going to be a lively conversation, and I love seeing all the comments from people in the chat room. I just want to remind everybody that our next webinar will be on July 29th and then August 19th. I hope that you'll be able to join us. So I will end it by saying, until we speak again, please be safe, please stay positive, and please make a difference. Thank you, everybody.